right. We'll call the regular meeting of the City Council of City of Clearlake to order at 6 p.m. Clearlake City Hall Council Chambers, 14050 Olympic Drive, Clearlake, California. We have a roll call, please. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember.
Here.
Vice Mayor Purdock.
Here.
And Mayor Sneakin.
Present. All right, Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Kramer, would you do the honor?
I would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, do we have somebody to do the, if not, well, a minute of silence about the tragedy occurring in Ukraine? Thank you all. As you noticed, I have my Ukrainian tie on in sympathy for him. Right. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Laura?
No modifications.
Any changes from here?
Make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor Purdock and a second by Councilman Kramer to approve the agenda. There we go. There we go.
Not showing up there. Try it again. Oh, no, there it goes.
All right, Madam Clerk, could you tell the results of the vote?
Mr. Mayor,
We go on to presentations. Presentations of April Adoptable Dog. And I see Charmaine there. And it looks like a puppy. Oh, maybe it's not a puppy.
She's a puppy.
She is a puppy.
Good evening. So this is Gloria. She's a terrier mix, probably some Jack Russell Chihuahua in there.
The microphone.
She's about 6 months old. Very puppy, active. She's a little shy right now. But in the play yard with other little dogs, she likes to chase and be chased. We have a couple great videos. It's really cute, but they're all just kind of, little
Be
race
good for the
dogs.
First Lady, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's not spayed yet, but she has a pending appointment since she's only 5 months old. She'll get it done next month. What else? She likes other dogs, big and small, and this has been fine with cats also. Probably just depending on the cat. She likes everybody, super social. She came in, I guess about a month and a half ago, covered in ringworm, like she had huge lesions everywhere. With the help of Dr. Sally, we got her treated with medicated baths, and she's on oral medication for another few days. And it's all cleared up, all grown back, and she's good to go.
All right. I saw some videos on Facebook. They were pretty, that was pretty cute.
She wasn't in that. They did theirs later, but yeah, that was our Easter toy grab. That was
All
a lot
right.
of fun. Yeah.
Thank
She
you.
did get toys too, though, so. If you're interested in Gloria, contact the shelter at 273-9440. We're located at 6820 Old Highway 53 in Clearlake, and we're open Monday through Saturday, noon to 4. But, obviously, we're always there, 8 to 5. So, any questions?
Charmaine, yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Purdock, is it?
Sorry.
comments? or
I know
questions?
she's not the only dog down there for adoption. How many are ready for adoption?
Oh, we have tons.
Tons.
Yes. Everybody's kind of at different stages. Some are waiting for spays and neuters and things like that. But we probably have 20 to 25 at all times.
Thank you.
All,
Thank you.
all breed,
Right.
Charmaine, or
Yeah,
just
Yeah.
big, small, and everything?
yeah,
in
mostly big, a couple mediums. We have some like border collie mixes. We have a border collie. Some lab mixes, shepherd mixes. We have huskies and
Very
a
nice.
couple shepherds. Yeah.
So did anybody show up for that dog that we brought down from the senior center? Greg brought in?
No, not yet.
Yeah, we had all kinds of people that contacted him after that. It's like, go down there, so.
Yeah. Oh, like an owner maybe?
Was it
just-
owners, people that just wanted the
Or
dog?
concerned?
Yeah, so I was like, well, go down there, so, and see, but it wasn't, yeah, unfortunately, the owner never claimed it, but,
Yeah, cute little dog.
yeah.
He'll
it-
go. So, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you next month.
There's Lieutenant Hobbs, but some statistics, I imagine.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. A quick update on statistics for the animal shelter for year to date. So far, 104 dogs have come into the shelter. 106 have left, so a couple from last year have left. 64 have gone to rescue. 25 have returned to owners. 16 were adopted. 1 was euthanized. So the overall live release rate is just over 99%. So doing real
Very
good this
good.
year, getting everything out. A lot going to rescues, just like last year. High majority of them go to rescues, but that works. So.
Whatever works for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
We're going to second item of presentation from LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation / DCTA, Distressed City Technical Assistance Program, representative on Clearlake projects. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, it's a pleasure to be here. My name's Stan Kiesling. I am a consultant working with the Local Initiative Support Corporation, which has a contract with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to provide technical support to small communities that have experienced natural disasters. And the staff of Clearlake applied to participate in this program and was accepted by HUD, and we were assigned to come here and work. I am formerly the CEO of an organization called the Rural Community Assistance Corporation, and I was there for a little over 12 years before retiring. But frankly, dealing with the issues of small rural communities has been a passion of mine for my whole career, and I wasn't really ready to retire, so I was fortunate enough to get this opportunity to work with LISC. The work that we have been doing in Clearlake, as the work that we've been doing in most small distressed communities, focuses on 3 areas: financial management systems, economic development, and housing. So on the financial systems side, we have been working with staff around the development of procedures and policies for financial management, including timekeeping, indirect cost application to grant receipts by the city, procurement, and fringe benefits. All of those are areas where we saw there were opportunities for the city to make small changes to their existing policies that would help to enhance the financial position of the city. And so we started out working with Chief White when he was doing double duty, and I must say he was darn good. But it has also been a pleasure to have Kelsey now as somebody who is focused solely on finance, and the relationship between the staff the other staff who are working with Kelsey on the financial policy stuff has been very good. So on economic development, we have had a number of different places where we've been working. We have been trying to identify resources that could help finance new businesses or relocation or expansion of businesses. And so Primarily that work has been focused on the airport and the renovation of the airport. And, we have provided some information about various federal programs, New Markets Tax Credits, the Opportunity Zones, the USDA Community Facilities Program, to name three, that could be used to finance businesses and business relocations into the redevelopment area. To date, I don't think we've got anybody who's actually using one of those programs, but certainly they know more about them today than they did a year ago. We have also been looking at Lakeshore Drive and working with the staff, consulting with the staff about opportunities to redevelop Lakeshore and the importance really of developing Lakeshore Drive. And I have to say that I've been impressed by the fact that staff isn't just focused on new opportunities, that they're really interested in and interested in redevelopment and interested in making that historic downtown area of Clearlake more vibrant and a better resource for economic growth in the city. We have, on the housing side, we have been working with the staff on strategies about how to use tax defaulted properties and to bring about new housing development. Working on mobile home parks and looking at the issues around the mobile home parks in Clearlake and especially since the Cache Fire, looking at how to redevelop that property and hopefully bring a nonprofit organization to Clearlake to actually work in that redevelopment if possible. We have also tried to provide some support to the staff about the administration of old loan programs that grant funds that were received by the city and used to finance housing rehabilitation primarily in the city. And some of those, those programs have been, it's been a long time since they were received, and certainly we've been trying to help navigate through the State Department of Housing and access resources that can help staff figure out what their options are, what their opportunities are, what their alternatives are for repayments of those funds, and also, frankly, for modifying the existing program guidelines that were adopted, some 10 years ago, frankly, and as people have come in to request repayment, staff has recognized that if you defer interest but you charge interest and defer it, it mounts up over time and can be a pretty significant number. And so there's an interest in trying to look at is there a need for an opportunity to forgive some of that interest accrual, which there is, and we're working on that still to try and adopt new guidelines. And then finally, looking at opportunities for new housing construction. And especially, I guess our focus is more on the affordable side than on the market rate side. There's some exciting things happening on the market rate side, and I have to say that the homestead program that you all have created is impressive, and I don't see a lot of jurisdictions committing the kinds of resources to bring new housing into their communities that you have. The nonprofits that we've been talking to are focused on trying to also bring new affordable opportunities or lower cost opportunities into the city, which I think certainly given the demographics of the population are something that that would be a benefit. So, you know, as I've mentioned already, it's really been a pleasure working here. I just applaud your efforts to make change in the city and the work both that the council is doing and that the staff is doing as well. That certainly, well, in other communities where we're working, we don't see that level of effort. We don't see that kind of energy towards trying to say, we need to change our city. We need to make our city more economically vibrant and healthier. It really has been rewarding for us to be a part of that, frankly. You know, our engagement is supposed to end like at the end of July, and I wish that wasn't the case, because it's been great experience for me working with your staff on a regular basis and being able to just talk about challenges and opportunities and to throw out ideas and have a free exchange of thoughts about how to approach various issues. There's one issue that we are still looking to help move forward, and that is community engagement. One thing that strikes us is that for an effort like the work that's being done on Lakeshore Drive, for that effort to really be successful, it needs to be a partnership between local government and the residents and the businesses that are there. And it's not just a government activity, and that, you know, collaborating on a strategy and developing a strategy that has input from the outside of government, as well as the input from you all and the government sources is in our experience a real key to success. So we've been talking with the staff about how that goes on. The mayor and David both participated in a meeting earlier today about community engagement, and hopefully you found that to be interesting and something that you think the city is important for the city as well. So that's basically the work that we have done and have been doing, and I would be happy to answer any questions if you had them about those efforts and where we're at today.
Mr. Flora or Mr. Kelsey, would you have any additional comments on this? Because I know you've been working with this organization.
I'd like to make a couple comments. This is the first time it's the first time that we've met Stan personally. It's not the first time he's been to Clearlake. During the midst of, he's from Sacramento, midst of COVID, he came over and drove around and checked things out a little bit to see if we knew what we were talking about. But it's just been a real pleasure working with Stan. He's kind of the project manager of the team, but there's a whole slew of folks behind him and working with him that are specialists in certain areas that have been helping us. And so this is one of those grants that, you know, there's no big check coming to us, but a lot of assistance from folks that have experience in a lot of the issues we've been trying to deal with. And it's really been invaluable in, you know, them sharing their wisdom with us. And something that I know you'll appreciate too with Stan's work over the years. He has had a lot of relationships in HCD, and he's very familiar with the HCD problems that we have, and he's made a lot of phone calls on our behalf, trying to shake things loose up there. So, you know, it's you know, you haven't seen much of the work that they've done, but it's kind of hard to encapsulate the level of assistance that they've provided us in trying to plan and address some of the critical issues that the city's facing. So just wanted to thank you for that.
I'm sorry, I should have said that I am only one of about 10 people that actually have been engaged by LISC and by HUD to provide assistance in specialized areas. So, and actually, in addition to that, we have been able to call on the resources of LISC specialists nationally. And I guess I should have said a little bit more about LISC, that it's, a national organization that works in mostly 37 metropolitan areas, but they also have a rural program that is working across the country in rural areas. So they have a breadth of experience and a huge staff and technical expertise that we've been able to tap into as well, just in addition to the staff that are directly involved.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions
Well,
from?
I was just going to add that we really wish our time wouldn't be over in July as well. The amount of support that we have received has just been, as Alan put, invaluable. And we feel, sometimes it's easy to feel almost isolated, especially when you're in a small town like this. And you all have provided such support that we felt like we've been a part of a bigger community. So thank you.
That's well said, Kelsey, that I think, being able to bring a breadth of experience and frankly, I think we're working in 20 communities right now, distressed communities across the country. And so the teams all share experience and problems and commonalities that we all can benefit from and learn from and are able to bring pieces of that to Clearlake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
my
All
pleasure.
right.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.
We'll go to public comment. This is the time for a member of the public to address the city council or any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought before under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on the next available agenda. Please note that comments from the public will be also taken on each agenda item, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. I have two comments sheets here, one from Joan Moss. If she's here, would you please come up and speak?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I wanted to alert you that there was a public presentation Tuesday about the Sulphur Bank Mercury Mine cleanup. And it involves all of us. The 150-acre Sulphur Bank Mercury Mine is an abandoned open-pit mercury mine located on the shoreline of Clearlake, between the city of Clearlake and Elim. Gavin Pauley presented a very ambitious program. And during the presentation, it was learned that the Environmental Protection Agency has asked for the help of USGS. They've been studying the mercury mine all along. Methylmercury was mentioned for the first time in a very long time. The EPA hasn't allowed journalists or any questioners to ask about methylmercury until Tuesday. Methylmercury is a highly toxic form of mercury that becomes magnified as it works its way up the food chain. I have this information for you to leave with you. And USGS will now work with EPA and discover and investigate what they've learned. And it does involve cyanobacteria. We hear a lot about cyanobacteria being tested for in the lake, but we don't hear about what toxins are in the cyanobacteria. This is an article from Brazil, and this says that the formation of methylmercury in the roots of macrophytes means that the methylmercury might be being produced and helped to live by the cyanobacteria, which is a fancy name for a certain kind of algae. So I just want to alert you that the Environmental Protection Agency will be holding public comment during May and June to work out a program, and they're going to talk about methylmercury because it is here, and it has been here for a long time. So I have these materials. I don't know who to leave them with. I'll give them to you.
You hand it to the city clerk, please, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you have any additional comment, or was that it?
I hope I've come within the 3-minute limit.
Yeah, you did.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, Mr. David Hughes, you have a public comment.
Can I have whatever she didn't use?
I don't know. It's debatable.
I haven't been here for a while, so Mr. Mayor and staff and members of the council, my name is Dave Hughes, and I live at 2705 Old Highway 53. I'm here representing not just myself, but 40 property owners in the Burns Valley Basin. We've banded together now. You'll recall we appealed cannabis grow or permit at 2185 Ogulin Canyon Road. You denied that appeal. Since then, we've hired a engineering firm and spent over $5,000 because we've also appealed a use permit at 2050 and 2122 Ogulin Canyon Road, which is just outside the city limits, almost adjacent to 2185. Our hearing's going to be May 3rd. They actually scheduled one for April 12th, and I wasn't notified. So I wasn't at the hearing. Thanks to Mr. Flora, I found out that there was actually a hearing going on, so we got it continued because staff actually said Mr. Hughes is not on the mailing list. So I'm here to, well, back in February 2020, involving the this particular cannabis cultivation that we've appealed, they came to the city council, to staff, and asked for a letter of support because the county ordinance doesn't allow cannabis cultivation within 1,000 feet of the city limits unless the city gives it support. I came and objected to that. The city council, in its infinite wisdom, said we'll support it. Since that time, the property owner was granted an early activation permit, which they violated, and the permit was revoked. I actually saw today that in September 2021, the county adopted an ordinance that says if you violated an ordinance involving cultivation of cannabis, you can't get a permit for 10 years. But in November of 2021, the Planning Commission heard this 2050 use permit hearing and granted the permit. So we've appealed it based on water and based on this 1,000-foot grow, the 1,000-foot setback. What I'd like you to do, well, and one more thing, since the early activation, they actually planted. The neighbor at 2160 Ogulin Canyon operated a kennel. She came to me wanting to know what her property was worth. She was concerned that the cannabis cultivation would affect the health of animals she would be boarding. A veterinarian told her probably not the health, but the odor could get in their coat. The people might have to, I'll finish real quick. The people might have to smell it when they come to pick up or drop off their animal. What I'm asking the city council to do is revisit their support, or the city's support, of allowing a grow within 1,000 feet of the city limits. We don't allow outdoor grows within the city limits. Why should we allow it a couple of 100 feet from the city limits, regardless of where it's at? Obviously, Ogulin Canyon is a little bit industrial, but the lady that owned the kennel sold, and she sold to the same people that own 2050 and 2122, and they paid her more than fair market value. The realtor says, oh, she got more than fair market value. I said, that's not the point. The point is, we had a business there for 25 years that's now gone. We're already seeing adverse impacts, violations of their permits, people having to sell, and I'd like to see the city council revisit their support of growing within a 1,000-foot setback. Obviously, although there are exceptions to being able to deal with something according to the agenda, and I don't know if this would be one, but we have a hearing on May 3rd. We're going to ask the Board of Supervisors to go ahead and uphold that 1,000-foot setback, regardless of what the city and the city council has said. We're organized now, and we're going to be vocal. So I'd like to see the city council revisit that and not support growing within 1,000 feet of the city limits. Thank you.
All right. Do we have any additional public comment here? If not, are there anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Mayor, there are no hands raised on the Zoom.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any changes to that? Mr. Flora? If not, all right, can I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. We'll go to our voting.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, do you have the results of the vote?
Mr. Mayor, it doesn't look like you voted.
Thought I did. Did it work out? Great, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, all in favor.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 8, public hearing to consider actions relating to Measure V, financing of road improvements, recommendations, action, hold public hearing, hear public comment, and adopt resolution. Mr. Flora.
Finance Director Young is going to give an update to the council on this. And we also have our, some of our consultant team on Zoom as well.
Hi, good evening. So a couple weeks back, as you all remember, we brought this forward to discuss financing for our road projects, and we were given direction to move forward with looking at debt financing paid for by our Measure V initiative. So since then, we have been working with our financial advisors who have put out an RFP and for various banks and other financial institutions to come back and give us some proposals. So now I want to go over what some of our rates are looking like. Since the time, still not a presenter, since the time that we spoke initially, rates have risen considerably. So we want to go over still what it would look like should we choose to move forward, and sort of discuss the direction we want to continue to go. I also included a couple resolutions so that should we choose to move forward, we are ready to move forward with our debt financing. Okay, good. There we go. All right, let me just share. I have just a couple slides. We're going to keep this very, very short, and then I will hand this over to our financial advisors, to NHA, and they can answer any additional questions that you might have about any specific financial questions. So hang on one second. Let me just make this go. There we go. All right. So again, my name is Kelsey Young. I am the Director of Finance for the City of Clearlake. And one of the main things just to be aware of is when we were initially talking about moving forward, we had an assumption that we'd be looking at a rate estimate of about 2.75% interest. Over the past few weeks, interest rates have raised considerably, and so the lowest and best offer that we have received so far was for a loan amount of about $4.675 million. We would still be paying it out of Measure B, and so we'd be paying an annual debt service, the same amount that we discussed before, of $1.5 million. We'd be looking at only a financing period of 12 years, which actually has some benefits in that it would allow for a few more years of pay-go projects utilizing Measure B financing. The interest rate that we were initially given was 3.3%, which is substantially higher. In about the last hour, the bank that we're considering working with has actually lowered that to 3.2%. So all of the numbers that I'm sharing will actually be just a little bit lower. So once we were to pay off all of our debt financing within those 12 years, we would be looking at probably, I don't have the complete numbers, I'm guessing about $17.5 million. Okay, so one of the legal requirements that we need to just show you are these are the same numbers just to understand how our debt financing would work. And these are our good faith estimates. Now, these are good faith estimates only. The final results may differ just a little bit. As I was stating, we just went down to 3.2%. We're still in negotiations, and we would actually need to lock in those rates. So one of the things that we're coming to council today is to show our good faith estimate of what we're expecting with the rates, but also asking for a little bit of flexibility from council so that we can negotiate those within certain parameters and lock in the best rates we can. So I did another analysis. It was a very short analysis of just looking at should we move forward, considering the fact that our interest rates have gone up. And looking at some of the same assumptions that I made before of trying to complete our project costs with our projects within 13 years with 4% inflation, I ended up with $22,000 or $22 million, excuse me. And looking at with inflation of a worst case scenario, utilizing the 3.3 interest, we're still saving about $2.5 million by moving forward with this way. And this is still comparing best case scenario with PAYGO versus worst case scenario with our debt financing. And we still would be looking at a savings. We have other additional options if we decide we don't want to move forward at this point. We could choose to borrow a smaller amount and then or set up our loan period for a shorter period of time. And potentially, if the interest rates were to go back down, we could do a second debt financing program at that time. Now, NHA is going to speak in just a few minutes. Even though this is a higher interest rate than what we were originally considering of 2.75, it still is a lower interest rate than we've traditionally seen for debt financing programs. So we still think that there's a lot of value to this. And some of the items like everyone to consider before deciding if we want to go with to not move forward or to move forward with a smaller program is just the opportunity costs of what happens if we don't continue paving our roads. We are trying so hard to change the image of Clearlake, and we have an opportunity to pave a substantial amount of our residential roads, which could then appeal to our investors. It would also potentially mitigate additional safety concerns, and there's also the opportunity for additional residents to come into this area. So now I'm going to turn it over to NHA, and hopefully, Eric, you can go in and explain it a little bit more as well as continuing to explain, if we move forward, what this process would look like.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. By way of a brief background, and by the way, we have Dave Fama with the firm of Jones Hall. He and his partner are serving as bond counsel and have drafted legal documents and resolutions that are in the agenda packet as well. This process started a couple of months ago, and in fact started maybe a year ago. But the financing plan has always been based on Measure V and what you can conservatively afford to finance in order to accelerate some of the projects that are important to the city and the city's residents. I think a lot of this information we all know, but for the record, currently the revenues are about $2.5 million a year. The idea has been to fund use about $1.5 million of that, as Kelsey had mentioned earlier, dedicate that to a financing to raise a significant amount of money for a lot of road projects. The financing idea was to go out 15 years originally. The sunset of the Measure V goes out to 2037. So we would be approximately taking a financing, the plan had been to go out to the sunset of Measure V. As Kelsey also mentioned, the bids have come in, but it's been a very robust process. The city has hired Oppenheimer and Company to act as a placement agency, and they've gone out far and wide for banks to bid on the project. Jones Hall, represented by Dave Fama and James Warziniak, are a very strong, top-notch firm for bond counsel services and have done a lot of work to make sure that the legal underpinnings of the financing work and protect the city of Clearlake. So since the meeting, I think we've had detailed conversations about the pros and cons of financing. And at its essence, financing, using some of those Measure V monies to raise a chunk of money, if you will, for projects is the strategy has been to hedge the city against inflation with respect to materials and labor for road construction and also create some economies of scale. That's the strategy. At 2.75% for a 15-year loan, it looked very, very strong last month in March. Rates have increased significantly. I think we can change the page. I've kind of introduced the folks. Let's go to the next page. So since March, when we were speaking, and we thought, and in fact, we had built in a little bit of cushion in that 2.75% interest rate. Always like to underpromise and overdeliver. Unfortunately, in this case, a lot of things have been going against the financial markets, most notably the Federal Reserve has become very hawkish because inflation numbers have been coming out that have made the Federal Reserve and others believe inflation is out of control, if you will, and they needed to do something very strong by raising the short-term interest rates that they have control over. That has resulted in Treasury rates, which is taxable bonds, but also tax-exempt rates to increase. The rates that we've seen since early and mid-March have increased depending on term and credit, anywhere from 0.87% to almost 1% in that period of time. It's been a very strong move. We just heard this evening or today that the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates another half a percentage point in May. That's been telegraphed to the markets and seems to be a certainty. So I think the business decision for the city council is still there, but it's not as attractive because of interest rates going up. But the objective had been to hedge your costs on project-related costs like labor and materials. Interest rates, as these charts show, are still in the low end of historical rates. We don't know where interest rates are going in the future. but 3.3% right now, and possibly a 3.2% for a 12-year loan seems to be where the best bank is for this loan. A lot of banks are getting very, very picky because they're getting a lot of financing opportunities put before them. So, and some of them actually are stopping their lending because they've lent so much money in the last 2 months because the banks have become a very attractive source of capital since the investor market has become very, very volatile and much higher in terms of interest rates than the bank market. So I probably should speak to what we're doing here. Part of the, go back to the last page because it is in the documents for approval before council. The not to exceed in the documents is 3.60%. We think we are going to be able to do better, but one never knows. We think we can act on that quickly, but for the purposes of approval and authorizing city manager to execute a term sheet as soon as possible, we have put in the 3.6%. And with that, I would turn the page and let Dave Fama go through the documents that are before you and tell you all what they do.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. So Dave Fama from Jones Hall, good evening. And the documents on this are fairly simple and very standard, you know, from our standpoint in terms of this type of transaction. And the way these are structured is it's called an installment sale agreement, and it's a sale between yourself, the city, and the Public Financing Authority, which of course the city controls. And so what happens in that agreement is the financing authority, you know, makes the loan, basically obtains the funds from the bank and provides the capital for the improvements, and the city agrees to make payments to acquire the facility and the improvements as they're being built. So at the end of the term, you know, it's ownership in full by the city. Fairly standard arrangement. That's the structure throughout California for this type of financing. The assignment agreement is such that the bank is folded into the mix. In other words, the authority would be responsible for making payments to the bank. The city has promised to make payments to the authority, and so the authority basically assigns the right to receive those payments over to the bank. So the installment sale agreement is entered into between the city and the financing authority. There's a resolution that was prepared, one for the city, one for the authority with respect to that. And then the assignment agreement is between the authority and the bank. And that would be a document that would be approved in the resolution as well, should you choose to move forward. So again, nothing out of the box here. This is very standard for California transactions for financings like this. And we've prepared the documents and could answer any questions about them. Thanks, Eric. Is it back to you at this point?
Do we have any questions?
See what the next page is. Okay, well, I think we are at the end. The timeline is we have council deliberating on this evening. There is a offer in hand, and previously the city council had authorized the city manager to, if rates and terms were acceptable, given the fact that interest rates have increased significantly, and the numbers have changed, it felt important for a full airing of the business deal, if you will, be put before council this evening, that you can authorize, if you choose, the city manager to execute, and then you would want to be, you would give that direction, and you would want to follow through on adopting these resolutions. So with that, I would give it back to your finance director and the city manager to discuss the transaction. And Dave and I would be glad to answer any questions about this item.
Okay. Any questions from Councilman Kramer?
Yeah, given the interest increase, now if I understand the principal that you're gonna be asking to borrow, has that gone down a little bit?
That is correct. Initially, we were looking at about 15 million. Now we are asking about 14.5. So it's a little bit less. Yes.
14.5 at the 3.2 or the 3.3?
At the 3.3, so that might go down a little bit as well. We can still see what that would look like.
Actually, the lower rate gives you about $85,000 more in
Perfect.
proceeds.
Thank you. So what kind of an impact will that have on the number of streets that can be repaired, miles, or
It will be less.
well, obviously it's gonna be less. Pointing out
Trying to be as helpful as possible.
Yeah.
You know, we haven't finalized the plan. I mean, it'll cut back a little bit on what we can do, obviously. But, you know, I still think that we should still be able to accomplish something in the 20-mile range.
And then the original rolling 5-year plan that we had, if some of those streets are not within that block of approximately 20 miles, is there a plan in place to try to keep those in the queue with that $1 million or so that's in addition to what we'll be having to pay in?
Yeah, I think we would try to attack those if they aren't included in sort of this large group of projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. You know, the reality is it may push back some of those projects a year or two while we implement this. You know, it's going to be kind of a lot of effort, and we want to have our reserve account established as we discussed and that type of thing. But we would jump back to it as soon as we could, yeah.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Overton.
Okay, so I was looking at your timeline here. It looks like the documents won't be completed until June, but are we locking in this rate? Like, is there a lock-in time, or is that whatever it is in June?
No, I think maybe Eric, well, I don't know, do you want to address it? I mean, if we get authorization tonight, then we would, I think, be able to execute the term sheet and whatnot tomorrow.
And have it locked in.
I'm not sure exactly when the rate would be locked in, but.
If you execute the term sheet, we can let Oppenheimer know, who can let the bank know. It probably becomes effective tomorrow. So there might be a little bit of risk there, but then it's locked for 60 days, which I think is acceptable to you, Dave, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so what we would, if we approve this tonight, it would be locked in tomorrow, and then the paperwork would be completed in June. All right, okay.
Correct.
Any additional questions?
Can we didn't really address this, but I just want to make sure the council was clear. So, due to some of the language in Measure V ordinance, there were 2 actions that were recommended by bond counsel that we took kind of in the interim couple of weeks. So one was, we did have a meeting of the Measure V Oversight Committee. We gave them the same presentation that the council had. We discussed it. They thought it was kind of a no-brainer, unanimously supported moving forward, and there is a letter of support sent to the council from that committee, so I wanted to make sure and point that out. Then one other issue is Measure V itself included an exhibit, which was the proposed expenditure plan on, you know, that's the list of things that Measure V dollars could be spent on. There was language in that expenditure plan that gives the council authority to make adjustments to that expenditure plan. And so one of the actions that's included tonight is it doesn't say, it's silent on spending the money on interest. Presumably, you know, we believe that certainly implements the intent of Measure V when it was passed, but the recommendation is that you take action formally, including language that debt financing is one of the approved expenditures for Measure V funds.
Is that in?
Councilman Kramer? Okay, go ahead.
Is that in the resolution?
Yes, I believe so.
It's
Yes.
it's the first resolution.
In 2220?
Yes. Correct?
Correct.
Councilman Claffey, you seem like you're almost wanted to ask something.
Unfortunately, City Manager Flores stole the question I was going to ask about the Oversight Committee, so I appreciate you addressing that. One of the options was to potentially refinance in the future if rates get back to historic lows. What would be that window? What would be that interest rate which would start that conversation?
Kelsey, I don't think I have the term sheet in front of me. I believe that it was, there's an opportunity to refinance beginning in year 5, typically with these transactions. I'll have to check. There's typically a penalty, say 2%, and then that penalty reduces each year so that there is no penalty after something like 7 years or something of that nature. I'll have to revisit that, council member. Apologize.
Mr. Flores?
So this is one thing that we had talked about. If the council thinks there's the chance that this is some sort of high point for interest rates and they're going to go down, we could choose to move forward with a smaller project so that we could do some of the things that we've talked about. And then when interest rates are lower, we could jump back in perhaps and do another piece. So kind of splitting it up. While we're disappointed with the movement in rates, at this point, we still feel like it makes sense to move forward with this sort of larger group. But that would be an option that the council could have if you wanted to kind of hedge your bets, and if there's some expectation that you believe rates are going to go down in the near term.
Any more questions from council here? Personally, I think it's, rates are going to go up for the time being, and it'll be, if you look at historical trends, it's going to be at least 5 to 6 years, 7 years before things start moving back down again. So, all right, we'll open it up to the public. When the public has any comments on this item, please address the.
Just a minute.
Someone else can speak to this as well, but this is a public hearing too, so I don't know if you need to
We have
make
to
a move
close
to
it.
open.
Okay, we opened the public hearing. That's what I said. I thought I did say that. Sorry.
Yes, Dave Hughes again. I wanted to voice my support for the borrowing to do the improvements. I think they did that in Hidden Valley 15, 20 years ago, and I think it was real successful. It's only 20 miles, and we have 80, 90 more miles of road out there. I would encourage the council to consider, in addition to what you're doing, borrowing the money, getting into neighborhoods that maybe don't have paved roads, getting them to agree to go to some kind of a bond to do the road improvements that then gets put on their tax. They can either pay as you go. I mean, you can pay it up front, whatever your proportionate share of the improvements are, or it gets put on your tax bill and it's paid with taxes. I know they did that out in the Parkwood subdivision, I think 5th through 15th Streets or something like that a number of years ago. And I always thought that might be a good way to get some of these neighborhoods paved that aren't paved.
Just like an improvement district.
Yeah, basically. I don't remember how they did it out there. I know they floated a bond and did the paving, and everybody had to pay their proportionate share, either up front or over time.
I think that was pre-Prop 68.
Could be. Does that limit? Oh, okay. Well, maybe there's another way. Anyway.
Okay, thanks, David. Come on up, ma'am.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for hearing me. I just wanted to also say that I think the financing is the best way to go because obviously labor rates, materials, everything's continuing to go up. So it's best, I think, that it just bite the bullet and get it done now. And I'm curious as to what is the plan on where the work is going to get done with this money? And how do those decisions get made as far as that goes? Because I've seen a lot of paving up in the avenues, which is newer, brand new streets, no houses. We have streets here in this area near the police station, horrible, horrible. You could drive your car in and park in some of them. So I'm curious as to how those decisions are going to get made on what's going to get done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have anybody on Zoom? Public comment, Madam Clerk?
There are no hands raised on the Zoom.
Okay, we have an additional public comment here in the council chambers.
Good evening, council and staff. My name's Terry Stewart, longtime resident in Clearlake. I would like to remind the council that even though rates have edged up slightly, I would certainly not term that edge as being significant as compared to the way interest rates have traditionally been. Some of you may be old enough to remember a time, as I do, in the late 70s, early 80s, when home mortgage rates were 20%. There was a time of inflation back then as well that was tamed by the Federal Reserve having continual interest rate hikes until the economy just really slowed way, way down. By a lot of accounts right now, the real interest or the real inflation rate is truly approaching 20% as opposed to the numbers that we're hearing from the government. These costs are all reflected in whatever work we're attempting to do, whether it's construction, road work, whatever it is, from small to large. Anything we can do to lock in the best rate today and contract a large amount of work at today's rates, I think we're going to be saving even more money than what we're talking about here, because quite honestly, I think it's going to take a number of years for this financial situation to reverse trends, and I think that moving ahead immediately is the best way to go on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? If not, we'll bring it back to the council. We have any additional questions or comments from the council?
Do you want to close the public hearing?
I'd say I'll close the public hearing. Any additional comments, things?
Mayor, if there's no additional comments,
Do we need a motion to close?
We don't have to have a motion. I think the mayor said he's closed the public hearing. That's fine. But we are looking for two separate motions on the two separate.
21st.
yeah. On the first motion, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve resolution number 2022-20, a resolution of the City Council of the, and read by title only, by the way. A resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake authorizing documents and official actions related to Measure V financing of road improvements.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. We'll go to our voting.
Aye.
Did you answer the results of the vote, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, it was all in favor.
All right, we'll go to the second resolution.
Mr. Mayor,
Please
to
proceed.
make a motion and read by title only, resolution number 2022-21, a resolution of the governing board of the Clearlake Public Financing Authority authorizing the execution and delivery of an installment sale agreement and assignment agreement to finance road improvements within the city of Clearlake and approving related documents and actions.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Kramer.
I'll second.
We have a second by Vice Mayor Purdock. There we go. All right, the results of the vote, Madam Clerk?
We still have the original on.
That's up there.
There we go.
Mr. Mayor, it's all in favor.
All right, thank you very much, the gentleman from David and Eric. Thank you.
Good night.
You have
Thank
your
you.
marching orders. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, we go to new business. Consider first reading of a military equipment policy ordinance and set second reading ordinance number 261-2022. I assume this is our Chief White's item.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, we are bringing before you for consideration an ordinance regarding a military equipment use policy. By way of background, the governor signed into law last year, AB 481, which governs the regulation and use of, quote, military equipment by California law enforcement. The law requires that agencies that wish to utilize or seek to acquire military equipment as defined must have a policy approved by the council by ordinance and then review it annually thereafter. The department doesn't use former military equipment, which is what most people probably think of when they heard about this law, but rather the law comes up with its own definition of what constitutes military equipment. It's a very comprehensive list, and it includes many items that are commonly used in law enforcement. In our case, the first item is our mobile command unit, which is considered a forward command and control vehicle according to the law. Therefore, we have to consider it military equipment. The fact is, it's a converted ambulance that often provides radio support to communicate during fires. And in fact, today at the disaster council meeting or following it, we're approached and the county fire chiefs intend to ask the city to start utilizing on all fires that occur in the county as a first response vehicle. But in any case, in accordance with the law, it's considered a military equipment. And then the second one revolves around a drone, or what's called a UAS, that we seek to acquire. So I would like to call up Lieutenant Hobbs is going to talk a little bit more about the drone item and anything on the forward command and control unit. And I'll pull up the presentation here in just a second.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council again. Just to give a little more on the command post, it's like the chief said, it's a converted ambulance. It's a two-wheel drive ambulance. It's pretty low to the ground. It's not very tactical or anything like that. We use that mainly for the fires. We use it for other community events. We're going to be using it at the upcoming Blue Zones in the park, the bass tournament coming up. We've used it at crime scenes just to have a place for people to stay, do some paperwork, get out of the weather, use the radio communications. We've used it at 4th of July pretty much most years, National Night Out. Those are the types of things we use it for. The other one is we don't currently have, but in this policy we have listed as a drone. So just a brief overview, and then I'll go into some of the details. Drone would be utilized to enhance the department's mission of protecting lives and property when other means and resources are not available or less effective. Some of the uses include, but are not limited to, search and rescue, suspect apprehension, crime scene documentation, tactical operations, scene security, hazard monitoring, identification and mitigation, response to emergency calls, crisis communications, and legally authorized surveillance. Some of the items where we would use it more frequently would be de-escalation. That's one thing we've been focusing on. Law enforcement in California has been focused on for a couple of years, really bumping up the training, things like that. So drone is able to help assess situations from a safer distance, get an overview of a scenario, of a scene or a scenario, and you might make decisions, that change what you're going to do. You might be thinking about going into a yard or a property, depending on what the situation is, but getting a different view that you don't have from the ground might change that, and you might decide to leave the area or not go to the go into the scene. A if you could go forward, I think just two real quick. Just that one, for example, there, that's a real life footage from a drone similar to the one we've looked at in the past. That's a residence next door where there's like 6, 7 people. And then over on the right, there is a armed subject laying on the ground. So in these situations, it's pretty useful, helps officer safety, help everyone that's nearby know where someone is so you don't stumble across someone that's armed. If this was a situation where they might have been a call where the person's acting out, might be not too stable, doing something, we might be able to see enough information that they're not armed, there's no one else with them, and we might determine, okay, they're having some type of crisis, but we're not going to go into this yard and escalate it more. Where if we didn't have something above them, we might not be able to know that information. Some of the other things that they're useful for, traffic accidents, reconstruction of those, you can get overview photographs of the scene. Several of the ones we've looked at have software included them to do 3D reconstruction of the scene. Same thing for crime scenes. You can get good aerial photographs, videos, and you can do 3D reconstruction of the scene. Another one that I think we got 2 photos of here would be search and rescue or missing persons type events. You're able to find people faster. You can get a good overview, look for people. Here's some, same thing. Similar drone that we've looked at before. Just an overview. There's an 82-year-old missing person. Flying the drone over, they were able to find him in this field rather quickly and get him medical aid. But there's a lot of scenarios that would be useful for helping find missing people, especially in the area we are with the brush, all the different things. They have pretty sophisticated stuff in them. The FLIR for the night vision. Definitely a lot of benefits to help protect employees and also lower risk by de-escalating situations and maybe not being involved in things we shouldn't be involved in, and lower potential risk to members of the public. So those are some of the benefits of them. And just for information, it's surrounding areas, just the surrounding counties to us. Some of the agencies that use them currently are Fort Bragg Police, Santa Rosa Police, Healdsburg Police, Cloverdale Police, Lake County, Mendocino County, Sonoma County, Napa County. So they're pretty widely used in our area. And I would assume if you looked farther south to the Bay Area, other places, most places are using them now. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from?
I just add a few more things to add. So the policy also covers, one of the challenges with this legislation is that it doesn't contemplate that agencies don't all have their own SWAT team. So in our case, we utilize typically Lake County Sheriff's Office SWAT team. However, remember that we had this situation with a person who was held up in the home for, almost 3 days. And in that case, we had the Sonoma County SWAT team, we had this local SWAT team, we were in talks to have the FBI SWAT team come. It's virtually impossible to predict what type of equipment that they might bring. The other part is that I think it would be unwise and irresponsible to create a policy where we try to sit here and decide what they might bring. And the reality is, who would have thought that we would have had that situation happen then? And in fact, when that situation happened, for one, there was no significant use of force or anything like that. But we were able to bring in a lot of technology that our local SWAT team didn't have, but Sonoma had, and then other agencies reached out and said that they would offer. The flip side is obviously we have to be respectful. We have a legal process. There is a law that was passed, and so what we did is put language in there that if you approve the ordinance, recognizes that situation, but also too, at the end of the day, under the law, the council would ultimately have the authority that later on, if you disagree with some tool that gets brought in or something like that, you could theoretically go back and change and amend the ordinance. The other part is that annually the law will now create a state mandate for us to provide an update on how these various pieces of equipment are used. So you'll have opportunities every year to revisit that. So with that, the law required that we needed to post 30 days in advance the policy to our website. We did that. We received no feedback that I'm aware of regarding it. Looking across the state with places doing it, I mean, we don't really have any controversial equipment. The ambulance out there, I mean, the last time we used it on a subject that was basically inside of the house refusing to come out, I think it brought breakfast burritos to the people and allowed us to communicate. So nothing too crazy there. In the interest of disclosure, interestingly enough, patrol rifles are often considered by some people as like a military type equipment. Those actually aren't covered under the regulation, oddly enough, but I think all of you know, and in the interest of public disclosure, we do have patrol rifles. The last thing I would add is that on the UAS, one of the things that the law requires is to look at, are there other alternatives? I would like to ask you for a helicopter, but I don't think that we have the funding for that. We have reached out, in fact, when I first came here as chief, I reached out to Highway Patrol because the area where I came from in sort of more urban areas, you call the Highway Patrol and they send in a helicopter if the county doesn't have one. We fall right in the middle of their 2 response zones, so we don't get a helicopter. And so in looking at alternatives, obviously UAS is a very inexpensive tool that can go up and get us ready access. We had a situation just a few days ago with, they believe there was an armed subject inside of a vehicle, and we wanted a UAS to land on the hood of the vehicle because positionally we couldn't get to it. So I think fairly non-controversial items, but we're happy to answer any questions or concerns, or if you want to talk about the actual policy itself.
Okay, thank you, Chief White. Any questions or comments from the council? Councilman Claffey.
I just had a question, Chief. In non-emergency situations, legally authorized surveillance, can you just give me a breakdown of what that means?
So that would be if, like, for example, they might be doing surveillance ahead of, like, say, serving a search warrant or something like that. We don't intend to take it up and go around and watch what people are doing in everyday life stuff. There would be a law enforcement purpose. And internally, like any of our other tools, you know, we have resources. So it's not something that somebody independently is just going to throw up and go looking in your backyard, stuff like that. There are regulations. There's FAA regulations on where they can fly over, that sort of thing. So that would be more of what that wording would refer to. But there's no like general mass surveillance or something like that.
All right. Open it up for the public. Open the public hearing. Do we have any comments from the public? Please come up to the podium, ma'am.
Margaret Garcia again. I'm just curious, the drones are not used currently in everyday policing here in Clearlake?
We do not own a drone.
Okay, I thought that, yeah, I think they would definitely be good as far as giving an upper hand to situations that can become dangerous. I'm curious as to when if that were to go in effect, when the updates on the, the yearly updates, when would those take place?
Annually, they would take place.
Mm-hmm. At a city council meeting or?
Yes, it has to be a widely publicized meeting pursuant to the statute.
Okay, so it's city council meeting yearly.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We have any public comment on Zoom on this item, Madam Clerk?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Any more discussion on the council here? If not, can I have a motion? Go ahead, Councilman Kramer.
Trying to figure out how to do this. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to move forward to hold the first reading of ordinance number 261-2022, read by title only, waive further reading, and schedule a second reading and adoption for May 5th, 2022.
And it's the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clearlake adopting a military equipment use policy.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion by Councilman Kramer and a second by Vice Mayor Purdock.
Aye.
Which one is not showing up?
They're all there.
All in favor?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we go to the last item on the agenda. It's reports by the city manager.
Don't think I have anything of significance to report.
Councilman Kramer.
I have nothing at this moment.
We'll go this way. Vice Mayor Purdock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a couple events. I have not attended any special meetings in this capacity, but the Chamber or the Clearlake Chamber of Commerce will be hosting a fishing tournament at the end of this month. Grateful for city staff and the work that you've done to help us process those permits and in supporting us in that effort to bring business into Lake County. We anticipate a little over 100 boats to come in for 4 days of fishing, culminating on Saturday with special college students fishing with pros, and then high school students on Sunday fishing with pros. So good to see the kids doing that. Also, June 12th, we will have a classic auto car show at Highlands Park. So we're excited for those two items.
Councilman Claffey.
I am looking forward to some military-grade breakfast burritos in the near future, if you don't mind. I attended the marketing committee meeting this week. Good conversation. I think that committee is going to evolve a bit over the coming weeks and months, so I will come back in the near future with some updates there. But that would be it, Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Overton.
I have
Anything
nothing.
exciting?
I have nothing to report.
Well, neither do I. So I guess we'll go to future agenda items. We have any future agenda items here? Any direction from council on that? Or if not, we close the city council meeting and we're going into